Good evening. You're watching Creative Tucson on Channel 20. This is 5 on 20 News with Randall Aguirre
and Luke Goodhart, coming to you live from our studio in downtown Tucson. It's Wednesday, January 17th. Let's dive right in with some local headlines. A New York man was arrested for stalking Arizona Representative and Senate candidate Kyrsten Sinema. Amos Olagunju was arrested at Sinema's office on Friday on the 7th floor of the Longworth House office building in Washington, D.C. He had allegedly been stalking the Congresswoman since 2014, despite multiple warnings from Capitol Police and 2 court orders to stop contacting Sinema. Sinema's staffers called the police Friday when Olagunju allegedly arrived in person at the office and stated that he had a meeting with the Congresswoman. Olagunju had attempted to contact Sinema 95 times in the summer of 2014 to, quote, express his love for the Congresswoman. He reportedly left several voicemail messages for her in 2015 and 2016 and showed up at an April 2016 event in Chandler. The first court injunction came in July of 2017. On Olagunju's Facebook page, he frequently shares posts from Sinema's social media pages and referred to her as my love darling and my lovely blonde. Olagunju has reportedly pled not guilty to a federal charge of stalking and looks forward to asking for Sinema's hand in marriage when he sees her in court.
Kyrsten Sinema is definitely a porn star name.
Sounds a little bit like it.
Just a little bit. Representative and Senate candidate Martha McSally said that Democrats should, quote, get over the idea of a clean DREAM Act in an interview with Fox News on Monday. McSally called the DREAM Act, which grants citizenship to immigrants who come to the U.S. as a child, a non-starter. In the interview, McSally said that, quote, there's no such thing as a clean DREAM Act. We in our bill have come up with the president's priorities, the American people's priorities, and that should be a starting place for these negotiations. McSally is co-sponsoring a bill that would replace the DACA program with border wall funding, limits on family migration, and the elimination of the green card lottery. Sounds like an even trade. If McSally's words bother you, then you're in luck. Indivisible Arizona is organizing folks to gather in front of McSally's office at 4400 East Broadway tomorrow at 4 o'clock for what they're calling Protection for Dreamers Now. Again, that's 4 p.m., 4400 East Broadway tomorrow. Let her know that you're not over it.
A new poll by Phoenix area Data Orbital shows that Arizona Representative Martha McSally leads former Sheriff Joe Arpaio by 9 points in the primary race for Arizona's U.S. Senate seat. McSally got 31% in the poll compared to Arpaio's 22% from 500 likely Republican voters. Both candidates declared their candidacy last week to run for the seat vacated by Jeff Flake, who said he wouldn't run for re-election. Former state senator Kelly Ward came in 3rd place with 19% of those polled saying they would vote for her. In another poll earlier this month, Arpaio led McSally, who tied with Ward. Of the 3, Ward has campaigned the longest as she declared her candidacy back in October of 2016. For those who were polled, 61% said they were extremely motivated to vote. They described themselves as strong Republican, somewhat strong Republican, Republican leading independent, independent, or MAGA, 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 kick all the illegals out, Republican.
Arizona Senator Jeff Flake addressed the Senate floor yesterday and criticized the president's attacks on the media. Flake, who is retiring after his term ends, urged his Senate colleagues to, quote, turn back on these attacks and prevent further moral vandalism. Flake said that no politician, quote, will ever get to tell us what the truth is and is not, then launched into a criticism of Trump, who Flake said is charting with the dangerous path with his incessant attacks on the media. Flake then noted that 80 journalists were killed last year and referenced a report stating that 262 journalists are jailed around the world. The speech was timed to coincide with Trump's fake news awards, which he tweeted about 2 weeks ago. The media was confused by the tweet and asked Press Secretary Sarah Huckabee Sanders if these awards were an actual thing. Sanders replied that the awards are a potential event, which didn't make things any clearer. Responding to the speech, Trump said that Flake would receive a Lifetime Achievement Fake News Award that may or may not happen.
Apparently we have a potential government.
Yeah.
Arizona researchers have found evidence of ice cliffs underneath the surface of Mars, according to a new study by the U.S. Geological Survey in Flagstaff. The study was published on sciencemag.org and showed images of the planet from a few years ago. Colin Dundas, one of the researchers, noticed a slight sliver of blue popping out of the surface. Dundas claims that the blue is a sheet of ice and has since found 7 more locations on the surface of Mars. He believes that the sheets contain ice layers and could possibly be remnants of giant glaciers that used to be common on the planet. These are not the first claims of ice on Mars, but the new finding could allow researchers a more detailed look at the ice and a better understanding of its function, which is, of course, code for there might be Martians stuck in the ice. Stay tuned.
Turning now to national and international news. The Pentagon plans to develop 2 new sea-based nuclear weapons in response to Russian and Chinese military threats, according to a report in the Wall Street Journal. The plan is in a response to a new Defense Department strategy ordered by the Trump administration a year ago. One of the weapons is a warhead that could be used along with the Trident missile, which is deployed by Navy submarines. This would take about 2 years to produce. The other weapon is a nuclear-tipped cruise missile, which was abandoned back in 2010, back when we weren't as concerned about the whole end of the world thing. The Pentagon says that Russia and China have not followed in the U.S. lead in reducing their numbers of nuclear weapons. They also say that the weapons will help push back against North Korean nuclear aggression. A previous report dubbed these weapons low yield, meaning that they cause less damage than standard nuclear weapons, even though they are still very destructive. The decision to speed up the production of nuclear weapons differs from the strategy of the Obama administration, who signed a major denuclearization treaty with Russia in 2010. And how much will this cost, all you ask? Great questions. A lot, it turns out. Wall Street Journal reports that full nuclear modernization would take up to 6.4% of the Pentagon's entire budget. This is more than double what the Pentagon currently spends on nuclear weapons. Sure, we could spend this money on providing Americans with health care or food, but blowing up things is just so much more badass.
New Jersey Governor Chris Christie signed a bill to outlaw so-called bump stocks in his last day of office. The bump stock bill was one of over 150 bills that Christie signed on his way out. Bump stocks are attachments used to make semi-automatic weapons fire automatically. The device gained infamy when it was used by Stephen Paddock, the shooter in last year's Las Vegas mass shooting. Bump stocks were previously forbidden to be attached to a weapon under New Jersey law, but the new legislation makes mere possession of the devices illegal. It gives current owners of bump stocks 90 days to turn them over to law enforcement. Selling or possessing a bump stock will now carry a 3 to 5 year prison sentence or a fine of up to $15,000. Christie worked with Democrats in the state who introduced the legislation in response to the Las Vegas shooting. Other cities, including Columbia, South Carolina, have passed their own bills outlawing bump stocks. Meanwhile, Texas has offered to buy all of those abandoned bump stocks for 39 cents on the dollar, saying they'll, quote, find a good home in Texas.
Former presidential advisor Steve Bannon refused to answer questions in front of the White House Intelligence Committee after reportedly being instructed to keep quiet by the White House. Bannon, who is also the former head of Breitbart News, testified about his time on the Trump campaign team, but refused questions related to his time in the White House. Bannon invoked executive privilege in his denial to answer questions, which is normally used by the executive branch, hence the name. This left lawmakers from both sides reeling at what some felt was an inappropriate use of executive privilege. Republican Mike Conway of Texas said that, quote, "This witness is not an executive," and told reporters that he believed Bannon would eventually testify in full. The hearing was left in recess and an additional subpoena was issued for Bannon to testify again at a later date. The Associated Press reported that Bannon's attorney, Bill Burke, was communicating with the White House counsel's office via phone to check whether Bannon was allowed to answer certain questions. Representative Adam Schiff, the top Democrat on the White House committee, called this a, quote, gag order by the White House. On the same day, Bannon was issued a separate subpoena by the special counsel to investigate Russian interference in the 2016 election. The investigation, run by Robert Mueller, has already resulted in 2 indictments and 2 guilty pleas from the Trump campaign aides. With a string of court dates in this future, Bannon might actually shave and put on an outfit that doesn't look like he found it in a Ross dumpster.
Ah, what a chump. Puerto Rican utility workers claim that the federal government is hoarding reconstruction materials. Armed federal agents entered a warehouse owned by the Puerto Rico Electric Power Authority, or PREPA, and seized rebuilding materials, according to a report by The Intercept. These materials were supposed to be used to rebuild the island, but instead sat unused in the warehouse. Puerto Rican Governor Ricardo Rosselló referred the case to the Justice Department to determine if this was a crime or at least a negligent action. Puerto Rican Senate Minority Leader Eduardo Batia said that, quote, lying about not having the parts to cover the inefficiency of PREPA is outrageous and those responsible must be taken before state and federal authorities. In addition to the PREPA issue, the Electric and Irrigation Utility Workers Union Aguirre supplied photos of other materials sitting unused in a warehouse in the city of Ponce. They claim that the warehouse contains materials such as large quantities of electrical wires that are critical for the island's recovery. They claim that the U.S. is charging PREPA of doing the same thing they are doing on a larger scale. A representative from Aguirre says that, quote, they're mostly just punching back in response to criticisms from the union. A U.S. spokesperson said that materials are regularly distributed throughout the island and that with an increase of materials arriving every day, they have increased storage capacity. Line workers have been frustrated at the slow pace of recovery because of the amount of time it takes to transfer materials from 3 warehouses on the island. Aguirre is now requesting that the U.S. release a full inventory of supplies recovered from the federal raid so that line workers and the public can know which of the materials can be used to restore the grid. 1.4 million people in Puerto Rico still remain without power. Meanwhile, the president tweeted about how his son is on Fox and Friends. To make it worse, it was Eric.
Yeah, Eric is my least favorite, that's for sure.
He's pretty despicable.
Oh, yeah. The director of the Centers for Disease Control and Prevention had to cancel a 4th appearance before Congress due to ethics issues. CDC Director Brendan Fitzgerald has been unable to testify since her appointment in July because of potential conflicts of interest. Today, Fitzgerald was supposed to speak at the Senate about public health threats, but is no longer able to appear. She has divested from many stock holdings since taking the CDC position, but she's been unable to divest from other holdings because of legal and contractual obligations. As a result, she's had to recuse herself from the CDC duties, including having to testify in front of Congress. Because of her investments, Fitzgerald basically can't carry out her job, which makes you wonder why she was chosen in the first place. This has frustrated Senator Patty Murray, who is the ranking Democratic member of the committee. Murray said that the investments have hindered Fitzgerald's ability to work on some issues related to cancer and the opioid crisis. She said that, quote, at a time when the need for a comprehensive and ongoing response from the federal government is clear, Congress must be able to hold federal agencies accountable. Fitzgerald wanted to respond, but she had to recuse herself and instead spent the day playing word cookies on her phone.
Democrats scored a huge victory in Wisconsin last night as a traditionally conservative state Senate seat was overtaken by Democrat Patty Schnackner. Schnackner, a medical examiner, won by 9 points over State Assemblyman Adam Jarchow, who was expected to win. The particular district went for Trump by 17 points in the past election and has been faithfully conservative for decades. Pointing to her positive campaigning as one reason for the win, Schnackner said that, quote, people sent a message tonight that we don't want to be negative anymore. This is the Wisconsin Democrats' first pickup on Republican territory since 2011 and could send a larger message of dissatisfaction with Republican support of Donald Trump. However, the majority still belongs to Republicans in Wisconsin 18-14, but a big win nonetheless. So congratulations on that, and let's hope Trump keeps tweeting.
Damn right. And I wanted to take a moment to talk about the program you're watching right now. Here at 5 on 20, we're undertaking a new kind of citizen journalism. We're going to give you the news as we see it, and we want more people to speak up with us. We need writers, hosts, anchors, camera people, sound people, the whole gamut. The times require a new way of informing ourselves, so join us. Do it now. Email us at creativetucson.org to get involved. And if you think there's a story we're missing, a person we should interview, an upcoming event we should cover, or any kind of news tips for us, shoot us an email to info@creativetucson.org. We are here for you, and we want to cover all the stories from all points of view, so don't be strangers. This was Randall Aguirre.
And Luke Goodhart for 5 on 20 News. Don't forget to like, share, and subscribe to our social media. And stay creative. Thanks for watching. Adios, Tucson.